on them.
Well, that's true. You know, special effects seem to appear a lot in more science fiction films. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
And I know you're a big fan of science fiction movies, but before we get into the movies section, I'm gonna, for the literary crowd out there that's watching, you're gonna start recommending some science fiction books and then books in general. So let's start off with your passion, the science fiction books. Let's go with that first.
Okay.
Some science fiction books. This is Tyler's recommendations. Science fiction, not scientific, books you recommend. I have a little list that you gave me. Ender's Game, Dune, The Foundation Trilogy, 1984, Fahrenheit 451. These are all classics. The 1984 Fahrenheit 51. I mean, I had to read those, you know, back in high school, and we're not even going to say when that was. It was when. And, you know, 2001 Space Odyssey. Yeah, there's so many. Do you want me to read off more, or do you want me to stop there and start?
Why don't you just read them all off quickly?
And do androids dream of electric sheep? I can't say that I'm too familiar
Philip K. Dick.
with
Blade
that
Runner
one.
was the story that was taken from.
Okay. Alien, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. The Time Machine, another classic here that was made into a movie, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Couple of movies on that one.
Couple of movies on that one. Master of the World, that would be...
Jules Verne.
Okay. That's, yeah. The Martian Chronicles, The Ill Man, I believe that was made into a movie. Who hasn't heard of Frankenstein, Flatland, and I, Robot. Yeah. I guess I'm just going to leave, you know, I'm just going to pass the baton to you so you can go ahead and comment.
I would like to say about Dune that to me, you know, Dune was the modern day equivalent of the Odyssey or the Iliad. You know, I mean, it was, and there's so much, you know, like the Odyssey and the Iliad, there's so much you could learn about the world we live in, the universe we live in. And the same is true with Dune. And interesting to me because I actually got to talk to some people who, you know, knew the inside scoop on Dune. And they knew the author, and they were telling me that Yui was actually the main character of Dune, even though he appears to be a supporting character and dies in the middle of the story. But Yui, for those of you who don't know, was the doctor in the story who worked for the house Atreides, for Paul Atreides and his father, Duke Atreides. What happened was he betrays their house and has the Duke killed, conspires, but he only does this as a temporary maneuver to maneuver against the Baron and the Emperor to get their confidence so he can betray them. You know, and you know, the whole idea of the plans within plans within plans. You know, and you know, it's such a clever idea and it was executed so well. And it's interesting to me because Yui dies in the middle of the story. He sets in motion the actions that eventually lead to the downfall of the Baron and the Emperor in this whole rotten, corrupt system. You know, and even though Paul Atreides, who hates his guts for what he did to his father, still brings up, you know, they both have the same enemy, the Baron and the Emperor. And even though he's not doing it because of Yui, he's doing it in spite of Yui. He's doing it for himself. He's doing it for his own people. But Yui wanted to bring down these people who were his enemies also. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, it's an interesting idea where Yui actually gets the last laugh in the story. You know, he eventually does bring down the people who ruined his life, even though the people who are bringing him down hate his guts, they still do it in spite of him. And to me, that's such an interesting story.
Yeah, Dune was like one of those stories or books. Never read the book, and I only saw bits and pieces of the movie. But the people that did read the book, I heard so many people say they loved the book more than the actual movie. It was like overwhelmingly like, oh, the book was so much better. One of those classics. Well, part the book was so much better.
Part of the problem with Dune is, you know, it's like remaking the Iliad or the Odyssey. You know, it's just such a classic. It's just, you know, it's like, how do you do justice to it? You know.
Well, that would be an interesting thing we can go. Any of these on this list here where, you know, I recognize some of them.
I would like to recommend the Alan Dean Foster's novelization of Alien, actually. You know, I would say that's actually one of the 10 best science fiction novels ever, even though it was taken from a movie.
Which you highly thought of, too.
Yeah, Alien's one of my favorite films of all time. Actually listed as the 4th best science fiction film of all time. So that's not faint praise by any stretch of the imagination.
Any of these movies on this list here that were novels first, I would imagine, of course. Any of these that where the movie did the book justice? Or maybe some that just fumbled the ball?
Well, I would say this, the TV series that they did of the Martian Chronicles, there were moments that almost did justice to Ray Bradbury's writing. Not the whole thing, of course, but the episode where these aliens are using their telepathic abilities to create an illusionary world for the astronauts who land on Mars, to deceive them. That episode, actually, I thought, that one episode did justice to, or came pretty close to doing justice to Ray Bradbury's story. The rest of it kind of dropped the ball, but it had moments that were really quite good. And I will say this, in fairness to anyone who tries to adapt Ray Bradbury, my hat's off to you for even trying, because his best works are of the best ever written. To try and do that justice is just almost impossible. It's like with Dune, as good as some of the adaptations were of Dune. I mean, I did kind of like the movie, and I did like the TV movie that they did of Dune, but it's like, it's almost impossible to do justice to something that's just flawlessly written. It's just this brilliant. It's just this phenomenal. The Lord of the Rings series, the movies that Peter Jackson did, I only really liked the second movie of the series. And I think that doing those series in cartoon form works better, actually, because it brings you more into a fantasy reality than using live-action actors. I like the cartoon versions of all the Lord of the Rings books, including The Hobbit, much better than I like the live-action movies, because I felt like I was more in this fantasy world in a cartoon than I was in and I think maybe they should have mixed some live-action with, like, a cartoon face-over for it, mix the two together somehow. But
CGI, there you go.
Yeah.
CGI.
Yes, they should have CGI'd it somehow,
Well, here, let's go on to some just general book recommendations. The Bible.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. You mentioned Wizard of Oz, Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Sun Tzu, that would be Art of War, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, that was a banned book. I, Claudius, Tom Sawyer, Iliad, Odyssey, Carrie, Women of Troy, Marcellus, or Marcus Aurelius.
This is his Meditations.
Oh, okay. Meditations. All right. The Black Pearl. Oh, hey, Jared. How's it going? You're watching public access television. We're taking down the list of Tyler Smith's
Yeah. Well,
book recommendations. I'll mention here real quick. The Black Pearl, 12 Caesars. Yes, that is quite impressive of a list. Well, I'm going to hand the baton to you. You start.
One thing I'd like to say about Women of Troy, I thought it was actually